United with Christ. Meet local churches with open doors, serving throughout the Border Valley community and sharing the truth and hope of God's love and salvation. A presentation of Life Christian Broadcasting Television. And now, United with Christ.
Welcome back to United with Christ. Thank you again for being with us this morning. I want to introduce our special guest. Before I do, I just want to remind you that we are here for you. United with Christ is a program that is here to let the body of Christ know that, and our audience here in El Paso and this surrounding area, know that God is alive and He loves you and that He wants us to be united in Him. Mm-hmm. So thank you, and if you have any prayer requests or comments, please feel free to call the number that's on the screen, and we'll be glad to. We look forward to praying with you. Let's go to our guest, Dave and Michelle Godzig. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Pretty close.
Pretty close. How would you pronounce it?
Godges.
Godges?
Godges.
Okay.
Just don't look at it.
Yeah.
Don't look at it. Godges. All
It'll
right.
mess you up.
Well, thank you for being with us this morning. Tell us just a little bit quickly about your story, where you're from, and you have children, all that good stuff.
For sure. My wife and I are originally out of Georgia. We moved from Georgia into North Carolina, and we started in ministry there, going through school and serving in local churches there. We have 3 kids. One of them is graduating high school tomorrow morning.
Great.
We're excited about that. And then the other 2 are a freshman and a junior in high school here in El Paso. Yeah. We were student pastors for many years, 18 years.
Yeah.
And then we felt the call to move into the mission field and move to Juarez to start a church. And so we now live on both sides of the border, splitting our time between El Paso and Juarez, doing ministry here.
Yeah, our heart was, we felt like God wanted something more out of our life, and we didn't know what that was. And so we just were praying. We spent a year in prayer of God, show us what that is. Yeah. And so we spent a year in prayer, and then we'd always been down coming to Juarez since 1999, and just came out here on a trip. And we just said, God, if Mexico is what it is, you have to show us, reveal to us what you want. And He revealed it very boldly and through local people there. Just the different events, God spoke to us and said, hey, we want you to start a church. We were not church planners. No. We were just student pastors and thought we'd be that forever. Loved missions, loved going on missions and sharing the gospel throughout the world. And so for us, when God called us to start a church, it was, oh my goodness, Lord, we need you. And so part of our heart was students. We really wanted to reach the students in the community. And so now we've had our church, we're about to complete our 6th year. And it is filled with students, and that was our heart, was to reach the community and those young people. And God is doing such incredible things through soccer fields, through jiu-jitsu programs, through coffee. Just we're reaching kids through different avenues through the gospel. So
I was over there last month and just blown away with the development. I mean, how things have changed since you first moved in there.
Yeah.
But also notice, like you said, there's so many young people. Mm-hmm. It's a church full of youth and activity and excitement.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you what inspired you, but you've kind of answered that, and you did spend quite a bit of time praying together and seeking the Lord. Tell me what kind of miracles, what lives have you seen transformed in your time there?
Yeah. One of the things that really broke our hearts for the city of Juarez was the lack of community that was happening, as in people were afraid to walk across the street and meet their neighbors. And so something that we wanted to do was just come in and teach community to the city of Anapra. We're specifically in that little town of Anapra. And so that's something that we came in and we started chasing after, of what does it look like to know your neighbor? What does it look like to serve your neighbor? And one of my favorite things is we had a lady that came in one day, and she said, "You're not going to believe what happened. I was on the bus the other day, and I saw another woman from our church, and I did what you told us to do. I went and I sat with her on the bus." And I'm going, "Well, that's amazing." She goes, "Oh, no, it goes farther." And she starts telling me, she said, the woman looked like she was crying. And so I sat down and I said, I go to church with you. And she said, "That's right, you do." She said, "Are you okay?" She said, "Well, not really." And they said, "Well, can we get off the next stop and have some coffee together?" So they got off and they went to the local little grocery store and they got a cup of coffee and had this conversation. And it turns out that the woman was depressed and going home to kill herself.
Wow.
And because another lady had the courage to say, "I'm going to do community. I'm going to know my neighbor. I'm going to talk with people outside of church." The woman was in our church yesterday, almost 4 years later now. She's still here and in our church and participating. And so something like that has been an incredible victory to see people saying, "I'm going to now talk to people outside of church. I'm going to expand my family. I'm going to expand my friends and get to know people around me."
Wow. I think, you know, the purpose and I mean the real passion that I have in doing these interviews is really seeking to know the heart of a missionary. And the heart of a missionary is one that shares the passion of Christ for the lost and to reach out and is willing, that understands that no matter where you're at, you're still God's representative. There's still a mission to represent Christ and the love of God to that person, to whoever you're with. And that's what you're seeing right there.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite, just watching what God did, we had a gentleman who had a young kid working for him. He met him in the streets, and the kid needed work, and so he started working for him. And he would always show up to Bible study, but the kid wouldn't get out of the car, and so he would just sleep in the van while we were at Bible study. And so I like to talk, so I'm knocking on the window. I'm like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I'm like, come hang out with us." And he was like, "No." I was like, "Okay." Real hard, real tough, just and so next week he's still in the van. And I asked the kid, I said, "Come on, just walk with me. Let's look at the student room," because we have student Bible study. And I said, "Just walk with me." And he was like, "Oh." So he gets out of the car, he walks, he goes in, he goes, "Nope," walks right back to the van, sits in the van, goes back. And I'm like, man, I really thought he would because the kids are playing ping pong and just having lots of fun to start off the night before the Bible study. And so I thought really he would be enjoying that. And so finally, the next week I knocked on the window and I said, "Hey, do you like to play soccer?" And he went, "I love soccer." And I said, "Come on." And I brought him out and we walked past the student room, and we had a team that put in an AstroTurf soccer field for us.
Right.
They had come and see the kids playing in the dirt, and the guy was like, "I own my own turf business. Let me come back and put this in," which to me was a miracle. That was one of God's miracles.
And it's beautiful.
It is gorgeous. And so anyway, so I said, "Come look." And his eyes lit up, and he's never left the church. He gave his life to Christ on that soccer field. Our student pastor shared the gospel with him, and he actually now lives in our home because he was living on the streets, drugs, and has been clean for about 9 months. And since he gave his life to Christ, he's been clean and never leaves. And now is singing on the worship team and sharing the gospel in the streets. He loves to rap, and so he shares the gospel through rapping, and he writes songs about Christ. And that to me, God used a soccer field to change a kid's life. Right. And so for me, that's a miracle in itself. And my Spanish isn't perfect, but God used a soccer field and the gospel to change a kid's life. And that to me is just...
That's exciting. That's what you want to see. And I suppose that that falls into your goals. I mean, what are your long-term goals?
Our long-term goals are just to show people the love of Jesus, help them fall in love with him, and then turn around and lead other people to do the same thing. And if we can do that, if we can create just a passion for Christ at a young age in the community, then I think that we can see a shift in the entire community overall. And so the long goal for us is just to save Juarez, Tim. I mean, come on. I think that just one person at a time, just doing life with people. Jesus gave us a great example of just walking up and doing life right beside people, meeting them where they are and refusing to leave them there.
Yeah.
I think that if we can do that one person at a time, that we'll see an incredible change in our neighborhood.
I think going from tradition and religion, going to a relationship with
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, being a community who loves, who serves, who lives out the gospel. And that for
Absolutely.
us was, we have to be in the community, and so for us, we're there every day. We live between the borders, between El Paso with our kids and the weekends in Juarez
Right.
and our home there. But I think for us is being in the community, loving people. I think culturally a lot of times when you have sin and you're struggling with sin, people are coming to us and they're like, oh, like I'm struggling with this. And I'm like, it's okay, come on. And I think the fact that there's grace and mercy, people are going, wait, you still love me? And you know this about me? And I'm like, yeah. Because, we always pray for God to give us eyes that he sees his kids through, and not to see the sin, but to walk with people from death and sin to a full life in Christ. And I think that's been like such a beautiful thing to watch and to see people going, wow, you really do love us. And I'm like, yeah, it's Christ, it's
Well,
Jesus.
Dave, you mentioned something. It's walking life with them. Just walking with them through life.
Yeah.
And that's the real. I believe that's the real definition of discipleship.
Right.
Jesus lived with the disciples and walked life with them. But you've taken a step further, and you have a home there at the center.
Yeah.
And you have children. I mean, you have some kids that you've taken in,
We have.
and you're taking it further in their discipling, right?
Right.
Right, absolutely. We have 4 young guys that live at our house in Juarez full time.
Okay.
One of them actually is our student pastor, and he comes from a great family, a great home. But we kind of brought him in, number one, to give him a little bit of separation out from the home life and help him to step into the next phase of his own life. But
He's
also,
a little older.
He's a little older,
Yeah.
and he is a pastor with us, and he preaches with us and everything, and so kind of bringing him there to be more of an on-site, full-time leadership for the other 3 guys. And the other 3 guys, I mean, one was living on the streets, and then the other 2 are brothers that had a house with no power, no water, nothing really happening, and so it was a better situation for them. And
They had left their parents because of a situation and wanted to come to church, and the parents wouldn't drop them off. And so they were living in this kind of like rugged house and
just a shell of a home.
to be close to the church.
And so we
Wow.
said, why don't you just come here? And we brought them in, and it's been change that we've seen that's absolutely incredible. The younger brother just became a Christian recently, and he was just inquisitive, and he took his time with it, which I absolutely loved. And we're all sharing the gospel with him, but more than that, we were just doing life with him. And I think that if you do life with people, it's the best way that you can share the gospel, because they see that it's not just me knocking on your door trying to get a number on my list of, well, I talked to this many people today. And they see, no, he actually cares, he's intentional, and he wants to know my story and be involved in it. And I think that through the time doing that, this kid, he's asking all kinds of questions, and you're like, so what do you think about that? And he's going, I think I'll just think a little bit more. I think I'll just think about it a little bit more. And then finally, how long has it been? A couple months now.
I bet it's probably been 2 months.
Maybe 2 months. And he's like, I need to give my life to this Jesus. We're like, come on with it.
Yeah.
And to see him start walking now and to see the change in him. And so.
And his older brother had given his life to Christ in like 2021, and David actually baptized him then. And, the younger brother just was like, okay, I'm here. He wanted to be at church, but it's fun. And so it was really cool to watch. I mean, our student pastor is the one that I love him in the fact that he lays it out, and he's like, hey, this is my God that I serve. This is what Jesus did for you. And I love him, and the fact that he has such a gift and a talent for that. And so the Lord has been using him. And he's actually part of the reason why we started the church. His parents were pastors in the community, and we had built them a home and had gotten to know them a couple of years back before we started our church. And their family asked us, they said, David and Michelle, you guys are student pastors, right? And we were like, yeah, back in North Carolina we are. And she said, you need to start a church here because your church would reach my son. He was this 15-year-old, like emo, kind of like dark, like kid in the back room and didn't want to come out and talk to us. And we joke all the time now. I'm like, you were that little emo kid that didn't want to talk to us, and look at you now. Like, you are just running with the gospel, and I love it. So
that, I mean, like we said in the beginning, your church is full of youth.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can feel the energy, the young people, young families, young couples that now have children. So now you have children's church too, right?
we do.
So, and it's growing, and I understand that it's growing. It's outgrowing your facility. Is this true?
It is. Which is a good problem, but
it's a good problem. It's a good problem. I don't know if we mentioned this, but the name of their ministry is Algo Más, which means something more.
Right.
Correct.
And so they're offering the community something more than religion, something more than what you're going to find in the bar or the nightclub.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something more. They're offering them the love of Jesus Christ, right?
That's
So
it.
how would you describe something more?
Oh, I think that something more is understanding that relationship with Jesus is far greater than a tradition of religion. That Jesus isn't about rules and regulation, but Jesus is about freedom. There's a verse in Ephesians 4:1 that says, as a prisoner of the Lord, I urge you to lead a life worthy of the calling that you've received. And when you read that verse and you think through it, as a prisoner of the Lord, if you're a prisoner to the Lord, then you're free from everything else.
Yeah.
And so Jesus is basically saying, just come to me and you'll be free from everything else. And so the more that Jesus has for us is absolute freedom. And when people see that and they understand it, they're never going to want to go back to the chains of addiction, to the gossip, to the lust, to stealing, and all these other things. You're not going to want to taste and see that the Lord is good. And when you've tasted it, there's nowhere else that you want to go. And so I think that's the more that we have for the community.
I think too, just
That's awesome.
Yeah, the something more is loving people. Because I think of the young boys that are in our home. One of them stole money, and just recently stole money. And we sat them all down. We're like, okay, someone stole money. Like, and David went through the table and like asked them, and they all were like, no. Later, one of the boys came to us and he said, I did it. I apologize. I went to who he stole the money from, confessed it, and he had his backpack packed. And he was sobbing, crying. And I said, what are you doing? And I said, I need you right now. One of our worship leaders couldn't come to practice. And I said, will you come and sing today at practice? And I said, where are you going? And he was like, I just got to go. I said, I said, what are you running from? And I said, and we just sat
You're
and
not
talked.
kicking him out.
And he had packed his bag
That
and was like,
was his
I'm going to walk. And I said, no. I said, because you're still learning and walking and growing in Christ. I said, you made a mistake. I said, but what happened? The Holy Spirit is working inside of you, and you confessed.
Yeah.
You were like, I did this. I want to pay you back. And I said, that isn't, I will take that heart all day long. I said, take that book bag off, get on that stage and worship the God who we serve and love and who changed our lives. Get up there. His face lit up. He just grinned from ear to ear. Yeah. He ran and put his book bag in. And I think because what he'd been used to was, you messed up, get out.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was like, absolutely not. Get on that stage and let's worship, because that's what we need. We need to worship and just sing to the God who saves us and loves us and gives us mercy and grace when we completely fall on our face. And I said, but you have a family here. You have a family in Algo Más. You're not alone anymore. And I think that's something that we've been able to teach people is Algo Más is more than just a church building. It's a family of believers that are saying, walk with me.
Right.
We're going to fall. We're going to mess up. But let's walk together and grow closer to Christ. All the people that are on staff with us, we disciple one-on-one and walk with them and teach them the Bible. And so it's just been incredible. It's overwhelming at times, but it's incredible.
No, it's awesome. And I want to say something to the audience. I hope that you're hearing the message that is being presented, that what God desires is that you would know Him and that you would know His love for you.
Absolutely.
And that you would enter into that personal relationship with Him through Jesus Christ. That He's not there to beat you. We don't serve God because of the rules and because of the law. He gave us the law out of mercy, so we wouldn't fall into these traps and destroy our lives.
Yeah.
It was out of love that he gave us the law. But he wants you to know his love.
Yeah.
And that's what Algo Más is all about.
Yeah.
So addressing the community, the audience today, what would you want to tell them?
You go.
Sure. I think for us is just, you said it, that God loves you. I think we all have something more to give. We all have something more to live for, and it's Christ. And I think that we can look for the something more. I challenge everyone here is, what's the something more all around you? And that's what we've always talked about we've had missionaries come and serve with us, and they've gone on to like the next level or the next phase of their life. And so we've always been like, chase the Algo Más that God's calling you to. You know, we thought we were going to be student pastors for the rest of our life. And God was like, no, I want you to go start a church in Mexico. And we were so ill-equipped. We couldn't speak Spanish, had no clue. We knew the culture, but we didn't know the culture. And I think for me is really to challenge yourself is, you know, wherever you're at, look for the Algo Más that God is calling you to. Because there's always something. You can walk into a store and you can see someone hurting or whatever, and God may say, go over there and talk to them. And I think that's the something more that he calls us to. We always say, live for something more at the church. You know, live for algo más, vive por algo más, or vive por más. And so I think that's just something that we've always been challenging everyone and that's something we teach at our church. What's the something more God's calling you? At your work, in the factory, at your job, your home life, as mom and dad, as brother, sister, what is he calling you to? Because I think that's something when we look around and say, God, show us that. It kind of gets almost off our problems and like the heaviness of the world that we live in, and it lightens our load and says, here, I'm going to serve, I'm going to give, I'm going to love.
Well, every one of us is created with a purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
We all have algo más that we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
You know, something more. And I know that for me, it's really encouraging people to understand that God created you with a plan in mind and with a purpose, and that his desire is that you would fulfill and complete his full plan for your life. And it's a good plan.
Yeah.
You know, it's a good plan because he's a good God. But if you're not looking ahead and you're not seeking what God has for you and what his desire is for your life, then you get stuck in a rut, you know, and you get overwhelmed with life. You get overwhelmed with you know, all the things coming at you at one time, and that's where the enemy has the, you know, upper hand, and we become vulnerable, and we can fall into depression, and then, you know, all kinds of things. So,
for sure.
but when you're living for that algo más, going to use that phrase a lot.
Yes.
And when you're living for that more that God has for you, then, you know, things just change. I mean, God just starts working through you. You start seeing transformations like what you've been seeing. We're going to be running out of time real here. And I really appreciate you all being on with me today and sharing your heart and telling us more of what you're doing. I'd like to, you know, if any of the audience is interested in more of what you're doing or want to be involved, can they contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find us on the internet. Our website is algomas.cc, and so it's algomas.cc. That is the easiest way to contact us. There's all the phone numbers and emails, and it's all over social media, so Facebook, you can find us there as well and send us a message, and we would love to connect with you and be able to hear questions or challenges, or maybe even partner up with somebody on something and have you come out and see the community that we're getting to work in.
Right.
Be glad to do that. Love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any last words?
I think that something to think about with the idea of algo más and seeking the more in your life is having a right understanding of who God is. There's a huge misconception that we need to be afraid of the Lord. And that's not what we talk about in the Bible with a fear of the Lord. But to have a proper fear of the Lord is to stand in awe of who He is. It's like walking around the corner into this huge waterfall, and you're just in awe at this massive waterfall. And I think that I would want to encourage you to seek out a proper understanding of who God is and why we can sit here so confidently and say He just loves you. He just desires you. He has a purpose for you.
Yeah.
And so until you understand that for yourself, I think that you'll always be trapped in the tradition of religion. And we want you to be free and be able to seek that more that God has for you.
Yeah.
Understand who He is.
Good. Michelle?
No, just thanks for the opportunity to just be here and share our story. It's definitely the Lord. And so I just thank you guys and encourage you guys just to keep challenging yourself to seek the something more that God has for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and I want to thank you, the audience, for being with us today. And remember that you can continue to call anytime if you have requests or comments, or we like to hear praises. Tell us what God's doing in your life. But thank you for supporting Channel 38. And we just pray that you will have a blessed day and a blessed week. And we will see you again next week here at the same time, same place. God bless you.